All right, for this final video, I want to talk about, which of course, quick look surprise. I want to focus on two articles on Zero Hedge. They're different, but they're kind of short, so that's why I'm just gonna kind of put them together and just make one single video. Honestly, I don't know if this whole thing will be 10 minutes. Again, quick look surprise. I'm doing 2 in 1. It's not even 10 minutes. We shall see. White House reveals budget deficit, the one that they gave us, will actually be $250 billion higher, or 250 billion higher, due to mistake. That's all, mistake. On Thursday, we first discussed that in its latest monthly budget report for the month of June, the U.S. Treasury reported a massive outlier that has largely been ignored by the general press. In June, total government spending hit $429 billion, the biggest one-month outlay on record, and 33% higher than the $323 billion spent a year ago. As explained, the main reason for the outlier print was that outlays increased by roughly $60 billion in other items relative to baseline because the Treasury revised up its estimates of the subsidy cost of student loans and to a lesser extent housing it guarantees, which I just discussed this too the other day with the same Zero Hedge article, or not this article, but from Zero Hedge. And as we further noted, based on the CBO revisions, it appears that the deficit for the fiscal year, which has 3 months left, will be in the $650 billion to $700 billion range, if not even higher, mostly due to the surge in subsidy costs of housing and student loans, guaranteed by the Treasury. This was troubling, as we stated. What the unexpected surge in government spending means is that quietly and mostly behind the scenes, the student debt bubble has begun to burst, and the Treasury is provisioning for it in real time, with all U.S. taxpayers once again, as usual, on the stinking hook. There was more. While outlays surged, revenue growth failed to keep up, which taken together led to our conclusion that while many analysts had a deficit-based case for fiscal 2017 at roughly $575 billion, the year ended September 30th, CBO recently revised its projection for the fiscal 2007 up by $134 billion, that is, to $693 billion. Most of the CBO revision reflects weaker than expected revenues, which means it will be even more surprised when it finds out what is going on with outlays. As it turns out, we were right. Because just 1 day earlier, the director of Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney, warned that the budget deficit for Trump's first 2 years in office will be nearly $250 billion. $250 billion, that is, higher than initially estimated, due to a shortfall in tax collections and a mistake in projecting military healthcare costs. Just a mistake, that's all. The problem first emerged in late May when Mulvaney submitted the OMB's first spending plan to Congress. It now appears that, as Thursday's data confirmed, the projections were overly optimistic, and on Friday, Mulvaney said the deficit projected for the current fiscal year has increased by $99 billion, or 16.4%, to $702 billion, a miss which was virtually in line with what we calculated 2 days ago. And it doesn't stop there, however. And Mulvaney said that for 2018, the deficit will be $149 billion more than first expected, increasing by a whopping 33% to $589 billion. In other words, a budgeting mistake just shy of $250 billion. In an amusing twist, Associated Press added that the White House kept its budget report to a bare-bones minimum and cast blame on the failed policies of the previous administration. Although whether the gambit of blaming Obama for budget errors, even as the president is all too happy to take credit for the market's all-time highs, will work remains to be seen. As Reuters further adds, the figures come as the administration is facing widespread doubts among economists and analysts that it can erase government deficits largely by boosting economic growth and changing laws like the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act reform is facing a difficult path in Congress, as you know, and the Congressional Budget Office on Thursday said the administration's growth and deficit reduction plans were optimistic. Worse, it means that far from balancing the budget, as the Trump administration had hoped to do over the next decade, the budget will drift well wide of even the latest optimistic CBO projections, which saw Trump's proposed budget cutting on the baseline number by a cumulative 33% over the next 10 years. And while spending took a backseat in Mulvaney's letter, he blamed the bulk of the budget shortfall this year and next year on lower than expected tax collections, which, by the way, the Webbot forecast way in advance of this happening. Specifically, individual and corporate income taxes and other collections for this year are expected to be $116 billion less than the administration anticipated in May. Tax receipts in 2018 are expected to be $140 billion less than initially estimated. We also touched on this 2 days ago when we said that one theory explaining the shortfall in revenues reflects taxpayers delaying the recognition of income in 2016, anticipating tax cuts this year. That revenue should eventually be recovered. However, as we cautioned, this may be an overly optimistic scenario, and the underlying reality may be that tax receipts are set for a structural decline as U.S. workers and corporations earn less and, as a result, remit less in the form of taxes. According to the Mulvaney letter, it was this more adverse case that is emerging as the likely explanation. The OMG chief did touch on spending, which he said in 2017 would be 17 billion less than expected. It would have been lower, even lower, if not for the use of erroneous outlay rates used in estimating costs of healthcare programs for the U.S. military, i.e. another mistake, and one which did not take into account the surge in subsidy costs for student loans, etc. So about that last part in the last paragraph, reality may be that tax receipts are set for a structural decline as U.S. workers and corporations earn less. About that part, I want to go to my next video. Zero hedge again. Uber, rideshare, Uber, suddenly, then all at once, is how they titled this one, and for good reason. Authored by Mark St. Cyr. From the article, is this Uber's Theranos moment? Now, much like Miss Holmes, the founder and CEO had to quit or resign to appease those calling for change, and much like the previous example, those closest and who should be the greatest ally for change and stay as to help weather out the storm are also jumping. Does that sound familiar, he says? Now, this appeared yesterday afternoon at about the market's close from Bloomberg, again to wit, Uber Technologies Inc. shareholders and its board, led by early backer Benchmark, have discussed selling some of their shares to SoftBank Group Corporation and other potential investors, people familiar with the matter said. For those who may not have had taken the time or cared to click the link I used to note who that closest or should be greatest ally that was jumping ship was, it was Bill Gurley of Benchmark. And with that now makes 2 points I stated earlier very prescient. Again, from the above article, the optics of such a jump while in the midst of such a crap storm at Uber, from my perspective, shows only one thing. You know the jig is up. It's all about managing the fall, and there's no need to do that in plain view. In the leading lines into my original article, he says, there comes that moment when the veiled threats against logic, such as the go-to excuse of, it's different this time, are exposed against the harsh light of reality for all to see with such clarity. It's different this time is precisely the apt statement to show why it is all fallacy to begin with. Uber has just had that moment, and the resulting fallout, as I've iterated before, will be legend, as he says. And I stated Thursday, quote, and just like that, suddenly, then all at once. So, is Uber about to do a and another one down, another company bites the dust? Oh, it's different this time, it's different this time. Isn't Uber another company that struggles with actually earning money? Like Twitter, like Snapchat, like, what was the other one? Twitter, Snapchat. Netflix, I think can we add Netflix in there too? And oh, Tesla. Not the 80s hairband, the car company. Horribly low numbers as far as new cars go for selling. Even the new cheap one, you know, the cheap one that's coming out later this year or 2018 or whatever it is. Not real good numbers. Not when compared with any other major automaker. Not even kind of. So all these companies not making money, not making money. Oh, that's fine. Stock's going. Stock rally. Stock rally. Their stock's higher. Their stock's higher. Yeah, fallacy. All right. You know, in a pipe dream, maybe. You couldn't get me to invest in any of these companies if it was the last choice I was allowed to make in my life. Like, you know, where I might be able to make a return. No. I will die a happy man, not putting any kind of crap into that and leaving my family with that festering pile of garbage. Unbelievable. Take care.